or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Fran McNamara, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the March 20th through 26th, 2026 issue of Buffalo Business First on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Okay, I'm looking at the cover, the picture cover here now, and okay, there's a medical picture. It almost looks like some type of an internal x-ray, and it says, "Can Buffalo build a medtech hub?" Today's special report, Buffalo Unlocked. Engineering strength and manufacturing capacity exist, but scaling will require sustained funding. Now, this is going to be the featured article, special report by Tracy Drury on page 8. But what's significant in this picture, and again, it certainly looks like an internal picture, it says, Vicara's vibrato aspiration device developed in Buffalo. So obviously, if it's aspiration, it has to do with the lungs. And it's very impressive. It almost looks from the picture like some type of a, oh boy, I can't guess the length, maybe 3-inch, 2-inch black straw. Very impressive anyways. So then underneath that picture, they give a little hint of what else is in here. We have the list on page 14. These are Western New York's largest life science companies. Then leadership, from sports to manufacturing. Elizabeth Galanis is the third generation leading sealing devices in Lancaster. And that'll be the power person in Power People on page 3. And talent acquisition. Law firm boosts compensation. Tully Rickney PLLC overhauled its pay and benefits to attract and retain staff. And that will be an article by Katie Anderson on page 7. Okay, so let's get right to it. First things first, on page 2, it says C-suite changes ramp up in Western New York. And there's a picture, again, it's probably symbolic more than, it's not really a picture, it's more like a work of art. There's a number of people in the background, all in purple, all the same, and there's lines of them almost regimented. And in the front is one in solid gold, and it says leadership changes took place in a range of industries around Buffalo in February. So the leader is in gold, and it says new leaders stepped up in at least 6 companies in and around Buffalo. So Sarah Paulson Meehan is the writer for this one. First things first, so let's get to these companies right away. The 6 companies. The first, I get to the beginning. Sarah writes, after a quiet January, February saw new leadership announced in companies ranging from nonprofits to tech firms to manufacturers. So the first is Catholic Charities of Buffalo. Tony DeSimone has joined the organization as president and CEO. DeSimone, who brings 30 years of executive leadership experience from Fisher-Price and New Era Cap, succeeds Steve Schumer. Okay, so that's Catholic Charities, number 1. Number 2, Egret Healthcare Ventures. Marty Borzak, the former Catholic Health executive, has been tapped as president and CEO of the Venture Studio and its 3 portfolio companies, Rookery Labs, Ampule, and Vicora. Third is EWI, the nearly $35 million organization that operates Buffalo Manufacturing Works, has announced a new leader. Stephen Kelly is now president and CCO of the nonprofit engineering consultancy, which is headquartered in Columbus. Okay, number 4, Graham Corr. Alan Smith, Vice President and General Manager of the Defense and Space Manufacturers Batavia plant, is retiring in April. He'll be succeeded by William Zmindek, who has more than 30 years of manufacturing experience at multi-state aerospace companies. Okay, fifth, we have Horizon Health Services. CEO Aaron Diageralo, CPA, will retire from the $90 million behavioral health agency in July after spending 20 years with the company. She'll be succeeded by Brandy Vandermark Murray, current president, capping a 5-year succession plan that was initiated before the retirement of previous president and CEO Ann Constantino. And finally, number 6, we have PMY Group. The Australia-based technology company has hired a Buffalo executive to fill its newly created Global Chief Operating Officer role. Matthew Wagner previously served as Executive Vice President at Sodexo Alive in Buffalo, where he led strategy, growth, partnership services, and commercial performance across a multi-billion-dollar North American portfolio. So, of course, best of luck to all of these new leaders, these 6 new leaders. And that concludes page 2. Okay, on page 3, we have that Power People feature that was foreshadowed on the cover page. And I'm going to read you just what the feature entails. Buffalo Business First publishes 3 annual Power Lists: the Power 250, the Power 200 Women, and the Power 100 Business Leaders of Color, featuring the top business leaders in Western New York. Each week, we'll tell you more about an executive on those lists, and this week, it's Elizabeth Galanis, president of Sealing Devices. Now, there's a little write-up about her, and let's see now. My gosh, they don't have anybody credited with writing this, and okay, so we'll get right to it. Elizabeth Galanis is now the 3rd generation leading a manufacturing company in Lancaster, but her career started out with a sports management degree and a job with the Buffalo Sabres. Galanis, president of Sealing Devices, and that's S-E-A-L, Sealing Devices, grew up in Marilla and spent her summers in high school working at the company her grandfather, Terry Galanis Sr., founded in 1963. Her father, Terry Jr., took over 20 years later and remains CEO. And here's a quote from Elizabeth. In our family, there's an expectation that you gain outside experience before joining the business full-time. Close quote. After getting a bachelor's degree from Medaille University, Elizabeth worked in ticket sales for the Sabres before moving into advertising and payroll sales for the team. Those early roles built a strong foundation to relationship building, communication, and business development, she says. Okay, Elizabeth joined Sealing Devices in 2006 and started in customer service before entering marketing and sales, then taking on leadership roles. She lives in Orchard Park with her 2 sons, ages 18 and 20, and is helping lead the company through an expansion at its Walden Avenue campus. And she has a quote here before we get into the areas of discussion. She says, you know, staying rooted in Western New York has always been important to me, both personally and professionally. Okay, now, in her Power 200 Women 2025 rank, she was number 110. Okay, so the first area of discussion, proud career moments. And Elizabeth answers, being recognized with the Women of Influence Award by Buffalo Business First was incredibly meaningful. Equally important is knowing I've made my father proud. Continuing my grandfather's legacy while helping evolve the company for the future is something I don't take lightly. And that sense of generational impact is deeply rewarding. Okay, the next is when hiring. Elizabeth, what do you look for? And she says, drive and cultural alignment. I look for individuals who are motivated to grow, eager to learn, and genuinely want to contribute to a team environment where people support each other and strive to improve. So, in Western New York, what's your favorite place to, it doesn't say in Western New York, excuse me. What's your favorite place to travel? And she says, anywhere warm and sunny is always appealing. Buffalo winters can be long. That said, Buffalo in the summertime is hard to beat. The energy, the waterfront, and the sense of community make it incredibly special. Okay, what are your hobbies? Well, I enjoy spending time with friends and family, cooking, playing softball with close friends, and golfing whenever I can. So, how are you as a boss? And she says, well, as a boss, I'm firm but fair. I'm passionate about developing people and creating an environment where the next generation feels supported, challenged, and empowered to accomplish meaningful things. So, Elizabeth, what would you tell your 25-year-old self? Well, I tell them, be patient, stay curious, and never stop asking questions. Growth comes from continuous learning and being open to new perspectives. What is your favorite restaurant? Well, as a Southtowns native, I'm partial to Rick's on Main for a special dinner, and Barbell for wings, and Taffy's for a classic hot dog. Okay, with the magic wand, what would you do? Well, I would like to see more consistent and practical support for small and mid-sized businesses across New York State. Local companies are critical to economic stability and deserve policies that encourage growth and long-term investment. And what do you do to maintain work-life balance? And our answer to this final question is, I protect my weekends and try to be fully present with family and friends. That intentional separation helps maintain perspective and energy. Okay, so that's it. The Power People feature highlighting Elizabeth Ganellis, president of Sealing Devices in Lancaster, and that's the end of page 3. Okay, next we have on page 4, Business of Food and Drink, and we have 3 items here by Tracy Drury, and one of them is what I call a mystery item. Usually it's a quote, or a figure. And this one is a quote. And here's the quote. It's a great location to springboard us into Florida. We're confident we're going to be extremely successful there. Okay. So the hint is, it's a company in Western New York that wants to use this as a springboard to opening a franchise in Florida. Well, let's see now. What could that be? Oh, okay, I know the answer. It says Wingnuts CEO Chris Cavallari of the Buffalo Restaurant's expansion into Lakeland, Florida, where it will open a restaurant in April. Wingnuts is also working to open franchise opportunities nationwide. Okay, so Wingnuts is what we're talking about, and here's the quote. It's a great location to springboard us into Florida. We're confident we're going to be extremely successful there. Okay, so that's the mystery quote from Tracy Drury in the Business of Food and Drink. Now let's go to the 2 other articles. One says downtown. Ramen returns to Main Street. A downtown Buffalo shop is bringing ramen back to the 500 block of Main Street. Vintage Coffee Ramen opened at 523 Main Street in the fall as Corbini Buffalo, offering a menu of Japanese snacks. Now the expanded lunch menu of ramen and origin Japanese rice balls wrapped in seaweed will fill a void left by the closing of Mizuda's Chow. And owner Matthew Zayas, who runs the business with Chiara Maslow, says there's just a need for more things and energy downtown. He said the cafe will also have vintage resale items, a concession stand, and movie screenings for small groups. Okay, again, this is at 523 Main Street. And here's a final quote. We're not trying to compete or replace anything in the market, just trying to fill a space to hang downtown. It's a place to enjoy a beer with a friend and have a ramen. Okay, well, now the next and last article on this page is the feature article, East Aurora. New owners, same vision for Elm Street Bakery. And there's a picture of 4 very happy people here seated in the, 2 standing and 2 seated in the restaurant. It says, longtime Elm Street Bakery owners Kim and Jay DePerno with Nick Emston left and Sean Donahue. And here's a quote from Kim. It would have been a last resort to just close. It would have broken my heart not to have it continue on. So it says 2 longtime employees will take the helm at the 15-year-old bakery. Okay. On a quiet Tuesday morning at Elm Street Bakery, owner Kim DePerno sits comfortably between Sean Donahue and Nick Ensteman, 2 employees who could easily be mistaken for her sons. They're not just because of their ages. No, it's because they just seem like family. That relationship, built over the past 3 years since the men joined the business, is partly what gave DePerno the confidence in them taking over the East Aurora Bakery restaurant she founded with then-husband Jay DePerno in 2011 while preparing for retirement. DePerno says, it was very important to find the right team. And she adds, this is my second home. And Jay and I built this for the community of East Aurora. So it's very important for me to have it always be a community asset and find people who understand the importance of keeping it community asset. The transition follows the DePerno's 2025 sale of the General Riley House just behind the bakery at 72 Elm Street. It won't be a quick turn, as the DePernos will remain involved in the business for the next 3 years. They will help guide and train Donahue and Einstein, who will gain equity and should help them get a bank loan to buy the building. The new partners will be in charge of the day-to-day, with Donahue running the front end and Einstein continuing as executive chef. The DePernos will stay on as CEOs. And now, Kim says, it's almost rent to own, but now the bank is J&I, and after that it would be a traditional bank. The transition wraps up a 15-year venture that started when the DePernos bought The transition wraps up a 15-year venture that started when the DePernos bought an 1890s feed and supply store and converted it into a community gathering spot. One side of the building is a traditional bakery featuring croissants, bread, and pastries baked in a wood brick oven. The other is a cafe open for breakfast and lunch. Donahue and Einstein, who officially took on their new roles in January, bring varied experience to the role. Einstein, a Long Island native, spent 14 of his 28 years in hospitality before landing at Elm Street. He worked at several kitchens in Nashville before moving in 2020 to Western New York, where he took a job at JT's Buffalo on Elmwood Avenue and spent 2 years at the Buffalo Club. Donahue, 35, brings sales and business experience. He grew up in Olean and spent 10 years in sales working in spirits, insurance, and then medical industries before joining Elm Street Bakery in late 2023 as a dishwasher. He moved up the line to cook, then sous chef before transitioning into the GM role. He'll take over for Priscilla Pilon, who will retire after a 10-year stint with the bakery. Otherwise, the 20 to 25 full and part-time staff won't change much. And Donahue says, we never want to lose what makes this place what it is. They built something we want to keep around. Close quote. Their dedication, DePerno said, is what allows Elm Street Bakery to remain competitive in hiring and attracting customers when so many new restaurants and bakeries are opening. And she concludes by saying, I trust that we're on the same page of our vision for Elm Street. It would have been a last resort to just close. It would have broken my heart not to have it continue on. Okay, so that's the business of food and drink. And before we continue, might I remind you. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from Buffalo Business First on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Okay, next we have on page 5, The Business of Sports. And there's 2 articles here. Leon Bunny is our writer, and the first is a mystery number. Big number, $34 million. My gosh. Well, it's not the amount it would take me to pay the cleaners for letting out my pants. $34 million. The amount by which the Buffalo Bills exceeded originally projected revenue for private seat license sales. The organization netted $259.06 million in PSL, that's private seat licenses, revenue for the new Highmark Stadium. Wow, okay. Now the article, not the big number one, but the article is Partnerships, UB Inc.'s MAC record naming rights deal. And then they show a rendering of Broadview Stadium, formerly Alumni Arena. Okay, $31 million agreement with Broadview FCU has multiple angles. The University of Buffalo has announced a $31 million partnership that includes naming rights, student scholarships, and a student emergency fund. The university and Broadview Federal Credit Union have entered into a $31.75 million 15-year agreement that includes naming rights for the UB Bulls football stadium, basketball arena, and an athletics village, according to the news release. The credit union is based in Albany and has branches in Western New York and across upstate. And again, that's Broadview Federal Credit Union. The deal, which includes funding for student scholarships and a student emergency fund, is the largest in the Mid-American Conference. The partnership is among the first to involve an arena, stadium, philanthropy, and an alumni association partnership. The 2 parties have had a relationship for over a decade, since Broadview has a branch location at UB's North Campus and has sponsored UB athletics for years. So here's a closer look at what the agreement includes. First bullet, revenue from the $29.5 million naming rights deal will go towards supporting athletic programs, student athletes through financial education, academic advising, scholarships, health insurance, and more. Second bullet, Broadview will contribute $100,000 annually to the UB Foundation for scholarships and $50,000 to the school's emergency fund. That's $2.25 million over 15 years. Next bullet, Broadview will issue a company-branded debit card with its logo and the UB Bulls spirit mark. The partnership provides added funding to the school through UB Alumni Association scholarships based on the new Broadview accounts opened with the co-branded cards. Next bullet. The 30,270 seat capacity UB Stadium will be renamed Broadview Stadium. Next bullet. Alumni Arena, home to the men's and women's basketball, wrestling, and women's volleyball, will be renamed Broadview Arena. The venue, which can hold up to 6,100 people, also hosts major school events like commencement and the UB Career Fair. Next, the area between the arena and the stadium, which includes Nan Harvey Field for softball, the Murchie Family Fieldhouse, and the Brittany Murchie Mula Sports Performance Center, will be called Broadview Village. Okay, and sports advertising and entertainment agency Van Wagner led UB's national search for a naming rights and campus partner. So that's it for the business of sports on page 5. And next we go to page 6. And this is the page about commercial real estate. And Holy cow, there's a big number here. $41 million. Let's see, the last one we had earlier was, the last one was, what was it? $34 million, and that was for the Buffalo Bills and their licenses. Now this is commercial real estate, $41 million, big number. The amount of which GRJ LLC bought the 608-bed Villas on Wrench in Amherst, marketing Erie County's largest real estate deal of 2026 and the second largest in over a year. So again, that's $41 million, the amount for which GRJ LLC bought the 608-bed Villas on Wrench in Amherst. Okay, now the next commercial real estate is an article, and there's a picture of a very long one-story building, although I'm going to assume there's a basement, and it says Crayer Family Farms existing main office in Clarence. It's a very impressive, very long building, reddish in hue with a white roof. And it says 92,000 square foot Newfane plant would employ about 60. Crayer to relocate egg packing work. Crayer Family Farms has proposed building a 92,000 square foot egg packing facility in Newstead. The application for the project at 5005 North Mill Grove Road is currently going through the town approval process. The project would involve about 12 acres of the 122-acre parcel, which has long been owned by the Crayer family. The rest of the land would remain organic farmland. Now, I'm spelling Crayer because I'm bet the farm, or them, that I'm saying it correctly, but it's K-R-E-H-E-R. Crayer or Crayer. The proposed egg packing facility would employ about 60 people, most of them existing employees who work at their Clarence location at 5411 Davison Road. Representatives from the company told the town at a meeting in January. Crayer would move egg packing operation from the Clarence location to Newstead. The family-owned business produces more than 700 million eggs a year, which are sold by companies like Eggland's Best, Wegmans, and Dash's Market. One major reason for the move is to protect the business's operations in the event of a bird flu outbreak, company officials told the town. The Clarence Holt location houses both an egg farm and a packaging facility. Both would need to shut down in event of an outbreak. If the packaging plant is separate from the egg farm, it could continue to operate and package eggs from locations unaffected by the outbreak, such as Crayer's Farm in Basum, Genesee County. The town of Newstead held a public hearing March 9th to get community feedback on the proposal. And Crayer Family Farms said in a statement, the company remains committed to working constructively with the town and respectfully engaging with the community through the appropriate forums as the review continues. Okay, so that's commercial real estate, both articles given to us, written by Jacob Tierney, and that's the end of page 6. Page 7 is legal and HR. And Katie Anderson is providing us with these two items. And my gosh, one is a mystery quote. Oh, be still my heart. This is the third mystery today. Quotable. It's been the most rewarding thing ever. Ours is a tight, close family. So to be able to go down the hall to my daughter's office and give her a hug and help her with a case is a dream come true. Okay, there's some hints here. It's family owned, it's an office setting, and they deal with cases. I can't give you any more clues. Jed Dietrich III, founder and president of Dietrich Law Firm, on his children coming to work for him. And again, here's the quote. It's the most rewarding thing ever. Ours is a tight, close family. So to be able to go down the hall to my daughter's office and give her a hug and help her with a case is a dream come true. And by the way, before we get to the next article, I'd just like to remind you, you're listening to a reading of articles and features from Buffalo Business First on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Okay, next we have the second of the two articles under legal and HR. And this says, excuse me, pardon me, my burping here. Recruiting. Tully Rinke invests 7 figures in pay, benefits for employees. The firm has implemented no-cost insurance and raised first-year pay. Now, there's a picture here of I've got the hiccups. Okay, there's a picture of a gentleman here in a business suit with a blue and white plaid tie, broad smile on his face. Michael McComber, partner and CEO of Tully Rinke, PLLC. The firm has implemented no-cost insurance and raised first-year pay. A Buffalo law firm is in its second year of a talent attraction and retention campaign that included a significant shift in its pay and benefits offerings. Tully Rinke PLLC, which is based in Latham, but has an office of about 12 attorneys in Williamsville, recently increased pay, health benefits, 401k matches, and added other benefits as part of its Year of the Employee campaign, which started in 2025. And Michael McComber, partner and CEO, said, "It's really just furthering our commitment to our staff and attorneys to make sure they feel valued and compensated for the work they do." The company, he said, came at a seven-figure expense. And here's a quote. "But that 7 figures outweighs the negative of losing quality people or the cost of having to replace them with costs in advertisements, recruiting, and time loss." Close quote. In 2024, the firm, which has about 80 attorneys across 10 offices, set out internal surveys and collected feedback from employees about what benefits mattered most to them. And Michael said, it's a two-way street. If employees are providing constructive criticism, it's only helpful if we actually take action based upon that feedback. Close quote. That's why the company decided in 2025 to begin offering no-cost individual health insurance for all full-time employees, as well as with free dental, vision, and life insurance. And Michael adds, health benefits were a major pain point for our employees with the rising costs for that. Post-COVID years, we were seeing upticks of between 15 and 25% increases in the cost of health insurance. That has a significant impact on the individual and their net take-home. Close quote. The firm also increased its 401k contribution to a 100% match up to 6%. So far in 2026, the firm raised compensation for first-year attorneys to $120,000 and added a bonus structure where attorneys can make up to 60% of their salary in bonuses. McComber said that in 2023 and 24, starting attorneys made between $75,000 and $80,000. So $120,000 is highly competitive for the area. And Michael adds, being aggressive on the compensation side of things makes it easier to find the right candidates. Close quote. McComber said the firm previously saw the most turnover from attorneys employed between 1 and 3 years. Overhauling pay and benefits has helped mitigate that. And he says in a final quote, in targeting that group, we saw a major impact. People want to stay longer because the firm is investing in them. Okay, so that's it for legal and HR, and the 2 articles were brought to us by Katie Anderson. And you know what, folks? It looks like we're getting to the cover story about MedTech, and that starts on page 8, and it's written by Tracy Drury. Okay, and it covers a number of pages, 8 through 13. Okay, so there's a picture here. It says a machine makes wearable electrodes for atrial fibrillation treatments at Nisha Medical Technologies in Buffalo. And there's a picture of a person working by a rather large machine. Of course, she's garbed in all in plastic with her specialized gloves, and she's doing some robotic design. Okay, and it says, Buffalo Unlocked, Economic Development. MedTech potential builds in Buffalo. Western New York has the research talent and support infrastructure to become a medical device manufacturing hub, but it must first overcome a critical shortage of venture capital and regulatory challenges. So Tracy Drury writes, Wayne Bacon brought decades of business experience when he co-founded Garwood Medical Devices in 2014. The company, which focused on eliminating infections tied to orthopedic implants, went on to receive 20 patents and raised $15 million for research and development, including $1 million from an $8 billion Japanese company. Okay, Garwood licensed other technologies out of the University at Buffalo and Syracuse University aimed at spotlighting cancer biomarkers and self-calibrating pH circuits. In the end, it wasn't enough. By mid-2024, the company had given up its 6,000 square foot offices at Northland Workforce Training Center and began eliminating staff. Okay, so Wayne Bacon says, we're basically in a holding pattern. We're supporting our important intellectual property and talking to a couple of companies about collaborating further. But I'm not hopeful, and I think that before the end of 26 that we will probably be shuttering the company entirely. Funding or lack of it remains one of the biggest challenges facing medical device manufacturers in Buffalo. Without funding to scale or reach clinical trial objectives, innovation is stalled and the company is unable to grow. But success has the potential to bring dollars, innovation, and jobs to Western New York. Manufacturers and industry supporters say medical devices could help fill the gap left by losses in the steel and automotive industry. Making it work, however, will require a different attitude when it comes to working together. If companies' competitive issues can be set aside, organizations that bring complementary resources and expertise to the table could help companies get to the next level. Garwood seemed to have all the ingredients to make it work. Bacon had owned and operated Mills Welding and Specialty Gases for 24 years before selling the company in 2007 to Praxair, then spent a dozen years as chairman and CEO at Immunodiagnostics, a producer of biological research reagents. Though Garwood is not operating, Bacon retains the rights to its intellectual property and says he has ongoing interest from investors in Japan, Sweden, and Mexico. Lining up the final funding to take it to the next level for human trials is the big obstacle, and he says, we got through animal trials and a pilot safety study and had excellent results. The Japanese company still wants to invest, but they want a lead investor. Okay, and on this page, we're now on page 9, there's a picture. It says EKG cables and pre-wired electrodes made at the Nisha Medical Technologies facility. Okay, it's worked here before. That's a subheading. The region has certainly had success in the past. The best early example is Wilson Greatbatch, who invented the implantable pacemaker in 1960 and then founded Greatbatch Incorporated in Akron to develop lithium batteries for the medical device industry. The company, which rebranded to Integer Holdings Corp. After a 2016 merger and later moved its headquarters to the Dallas area, now has sales of $1.7 billion. And while the region is home to dozens of medical device manufacturers, none has come close to that size and scale. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Buffalo-Cheektowaga metro area, which includes Erie and Niagara counties, was home to 44 medical equipment and supply manufacturers with 1,625 employees as of the second quarter of last year, the most recent period for which data was unavailable. The most recent period for which data was available. And that was second quarter 2025. So that's down a bit from late 2024 when employment peaked at 1,776, but up from 2020 when the industry included 53 companies with 1,393 employees. Wages during the same period have seen a big increase, with the total paid out during the growing from $77.6 million in 2020 to 128.2 million. So that an average worker's pay rose from $55,699 to $72,187. It is unclear whether these figures include Integer, since the company is no longer based here, although it remains one of the largest employers and ranks second on Buffalo Business First life science companies list, with 865 employees at the Clarence location. Other Buffalo-based success stories include Harmac Medical Products, which is focused on contract manufacturing of single-use medical products and has grown to 400 employees, and Nisha Medical Technologies, which has $305 million in revenue and 350 employees. With roots in Buffalo dating back to 1909, Nisha's Exchange Street facility is now the U.S. headquarters for Kyoto-based Nisha Company Limited. The company has seen increased capacity in recent years for medical devices ranging from staplers for gastrectomy procedures to micro-molded devices for kidney stone removal. CEO Brandon Hoffman said he sees lots of opportunities for the industry through the region. CEO Brandon Hoffman said he sees lots of opportunity for the industry, though the region must increase momentum to bring more money into the market. And he adds, there's a bit of the chicken and egg problem with medtech innovation and the ecosystem. You see it really take off when there's some really big VC and more money to pour back in. Okay, close quote. That can begin to build with just a few companies finding success at the exit level or by licensing their technology to the right buyers. He added, this starts with the right level of research and developing engineering, including engineers who are focused on opportunities for commercialization in addition to patent outcomes. Hoffman, who attended UB for his undergraduate engineering degree and an MBA, said the university is playing a role in that process and helping to identify tech transfer opportunities. And Hoffman adds in this quote, I'd like to see Buffalo start doing what we're seeing happening in Nashville, which is the ecosystem starting with some successful startups getting acquired, and then it just kind of builds from there. And Hoffman adds, if there's more technology to be funded, then we will be able to build more business. We need the technology development to happen first. And on this page, there's a picture of a young lady in the warehouse setting. It says Erin Garcia, Senior Associate, Egret Healthcare Ventures, and Director of Engineering, Vicora Incorporated, works with Vicora's Vibrato aspiration device. And that's the one I mentioned that was in the cover picture. Now it says here, and this is in bold print, VC funding is scarce statewide. Okay? Funding isn't just a Buffalo problem. New York has 17 centers of excellence and 15 centers for advanced technology like the ones at UB. Smitha James is Senior Associate Director for Life Science Program at UB, overseeing business and entrepreneur partnerships, the school's Center for Excellence in Bioinformatics and Life Sciences, and the UB Center for Advanced Technology and Big Data and Health Center. She heard representatives from centers across the state talk about the VC problem. And here's what James says. She says, so if a company is looking to license out and get acquired, that's fantastic. We can connect them, but we're still kind of struggling to garner a large network of venture capitals. The conversation is always, how do we get VCs? New York City is also struggling. They're focused in Boston and elsewhere, close quote. That's what leads many companies to sell or license their technology versus moving into the manufacturing phase here in Buffalo, where they could create more jobs. That's not always a bad thing, James pointed to Athenex, which worked for 20 years to grow its chemotherapy drugs here before filing for bankruptcy in 2023. Some former staffers who were experts in drug development stayed in Buffalo and are now serving on UB advisory boards to help the next generation of innovators. And James adds, the company left behind people with this expertise that we can continually tap into. I feel the same way with startups getting acquired. It still leaves behind those entrepreneurs who have done this. So now when we have a company coming out of the university who need a good CEO, we can tap into those folks. Okay, now we're on page 11, and there's a picture here of, well, we can't see the young lady's face, but Yelena Versilova tests patent samples at the KSL Biomedical Office and Lab in Cheektowaga. Okay, so building an ecosystem, another subheading. Startups and companies in growth phase can find a network of supports here, including commercialization and transitional team at UB, the Jacobs Institute, which helps develop, test, and accelerate new medical devices, and eGred Healthcare Ventures, focused on seed capital, technical enterprise, and small contract manufacturing and prototyping through its Rookery Technology Innovation Lab. And on this page, it's got a picture of Vicora's Vibrato Aspiration Device is a specialized catheter system that uses vibration technology to remove clots associated with pulmonary embolism, deep vein thromboses, and stroke. And you know, it's not much bigger than the size of the model's hand, maybe by about 1/4 of an inch, this vibrato aspiration device. Okay, James pointed specifically to people like Sean Patterson, an eGret partner who came to Buffalo with 25 years industry experience, including founding and building Minneapolis-based Resolution Medical, before successfully selling the 9-year-old company to a private equity firm in 2021. His reputation is helping to draw startups from other parts of the country who see Buffalo as a soft landing site. So she said, okay, you need someone with specific expertise that has worked with the FDA and knows how the product will be received and knows how to get through the regulatory pathway. That's exciting to me because now I can see the ripple effect. Once you get the right expert in, they're pulling others in, close quote. And before I continue again, hey, you're listening to a reading of articles and features from Buffalo Business First on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Okay, getting back to this. Yet, not every medical device development company is destined to launch manufacturing here, and selling or licensing the technology can still have major benefits for the region. Launched in 2020, Egret has already spun out 2 portfolio companies. Ampule is developing a guide wire that provides haptic feedback for clinicians, while Vicora's specialized catheter system uses vibration technology to remove clots associated with pulmonary embolism, deep vein thrombosis, and stroke. Vicora has raised more than $3.6 million for the device and expects to reach FDA approval this year. That could lead to a sale, which would then generate funding for Egret to invest venture capital in more local companies. That's part of how Egret co-founder Bill Maggio hopes to attract other funders to opportunities in the region. That goal, Maggio says, is convincing the world that Buffalo is a place where you can actually build a medical device. He's watched the industry grow over the past several decades and experienced success when he negotiated a $33 million deal to sell his IMCO Diagnostics in 2012. And Maggio says, as a young entrepreneur, I got a lot of support, but it was kind of rah-rah, go and get 'em. There wasn't a lot of infrastructure around medical development devices development in Buffalo. The shiny object was therapeutics, which got a lot of attention, he says, close quote. Buffalo has never had the right level of capital to stand up a pharmaceutical company, but medical devices have been much more accessible. That's why Maggio stepped into this space. He's been an investor as managing director at Lorraine Capital, LLC, joined the board at Kaleida Health, and served as CEO at the Jacobs Institute, which also co-founded the 43 North Business Competition and Accelerator program. Still, far fewer medical device companies applied to the company versus therapeutic companies, which have a far longer and more expensive journey in success. That prompted the creation of Egret as a vehicle to stimulate interest in making Buffalo a hub for medical device innovation. Physicians often come up with an innovative idea, but the focus is on delivering better health care and less on entrepreneurship and how to commercialize the good ideas that come with that process. So Maggio says the idea is not to leave great ideas on the operating floor. Finally, filling the gap. Kevin Lawson, CEO at KSI Biomedicals, recognizes the benefit of collaboration for the region, especially when it comes to navigating the complicated regulatory and reimbursement environment. His main focus is on building KSL's in vitro diagnostic medical device manufacturing business from facilities here in Buffalo and in Burlington, Ontario. But Lawson is also lending his expertise to Ampule and Vicora as quality regulator officer. He's seen the ups and downs of the industry. Founded in 2017, KSI grew during the pandemic from 35 to 120 employees as it ramped up production of the COVID-19 testing kits. Once demand waned, Lawson said, he rebuilt the business with revenue growing 20% from 2024 to 25 and another 25 to 30% expected for 2026. KSI is back up to 55 employees and expects to hire another 5 to 10 this year with new business coming in. That kind of pivot and growth was made possible by his experience dealing with third-party insurers and government payers, he said, as well as having KSL's FDA compliant lab and various international standard ISO certifications. For a startup, however, putting the right equipment in place to meet those requirements as well as the cost to prototype could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, he said. And here's a quote from Lawson. Many companies can't even go through the reimbursement process until the device is marketable. Unless you're well funded, you may have several years of operating expenses you need to come up with before your product goes commercial. Close quote. In markets like Boston or Minneapolis, where there's a whole ecosystem of professionals tied to medical devices from major manufacturers, there's a lot of human capital with resources available. That's not necessarily the case here, and Lawson says, In Buffalo, you've got to recruit these people in or figure out a way to access talent. That's a major limitation in our field. There's been a brain drain in the area. If you're a med tech with a license from UB, you've probably been recruited out to another place with jobs that are higher paying. It's a challenge to be able to recruit people into the area and preserve the jobs here, he says. Close quote. Despite the challenges, the key now is putting all the pieces together across the ecosystem and to be willing to work together and collaborate, Maggio said. And in a final quote, he says, you have to take an abundance mindset. No one can assume they have it all. When you look at successful communities, the community comes together and recognizes the collective strength of the assets of the community. That's always been Buffalo's biggest problem. Close quote. So that's MedTech Potential Builds in Buffalo. That's the cover story under Buffalo Unlocked. And just one thing about this feature. How far can the region's transformation go and what's holding it back? Buffalo Business First continues to look at how the region can capitalize on strengths and address weaknesses, improving the local economy and quality of life for the people who live here. So that's why we ask business leaders and other key stakeholders what Buffalo's potential is and how that potential can be unlocked. So therefore, we had this edition's MedTech Potential Building in Buffalo. We want to hear from you. What must be done to unlock Buffalo's potential? What assets should be utilized? What issues should be addressed? Email Editor-in-Chief Michelle Chioshi Adams at mcadams@bizjournals.com. Again, that's you're contacting Michelle Chioshi Adams at, these are all small letters, mcadams@biz with a Z, bizjournals.com. And your comments may be used in future stories. And of course it mentions, and I'd like to mention too, that you can go online and get some of the past articles from the Buffalo Unlocked. And let's see now, there used to be a little mention here, but here's what you do. You go to your browser and you type in NFRRS, Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and you can get some of these articles that have been read by our people there, or you can go to bizjournals.com /Buffalo /news Buffalo feature /Buffalo Unlocked. So there's two ways of trying to get some of these former articles at your fingertips. Okay, so you've been listening to a reading of the March 20th to 26th edition of Buffalo Business First. We read from Buffalo Business First every Wednesday at 7 p.m., and your reader has been Fran McNamara, and I'd really like to offer you a sincere thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have Time Magazine. At 8 o'clock, we have the New York Times. And following that, at 9 o'clock, we have Discover Magazine. Stay with us for these readings and more throughout the day. Thank you for listening. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which